Okay, let's get started. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight, and welcome to the second webinar in the Hydrocephalus Canada and Holland Bloorview Kids Rehab Hospital Youth Webinar Series, sponsored by the Sick Kids Foundation. This webinar will focus on social skills and friendships for youth with spina bifida and hydrocephalus. Our presenters are Steph Di Martino and Melissa Thorne. Steph will share her insights as a life skills coach in the transitions, recreation, and life skills team at Holland Bloorview Kids Rehab. Life skills can relate to anything you do on a daily basis, such as social, friendship development, to managing one's personal health. As a life skills coach, Steph helps to provide experience-based activities to support learning, using discussion, role play, problem solving, and peer mentoring with an experiential, immersive approach. Steph is joined by Melissa Thorne, a member of the Holland Bloorview Alumni Network and youth facilitator at the center. A youth facilitator is a young adult with a childhood onset disability that helps youth and their families transition to adult life. Melissa is also a person with spina bifida and hydrocephalus, who lived at Holland Bloorview as an inpatient for a year after having multiple orthopedic surgeries in grade 10. Steph and Melissa will explore strategies to build conversation skills, talk about where to meet people your age, how to build connections, what to look for in a friend, and help you become aware of what you bring to the table of friendship. Steph and Melissa will follow their presentation with a question and answer session. Okay, Steph and Melissa, let's get this discussion started. I'll leave it up to you.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for that warm welcome there, Shauna.
You're welcome.
So, some topics that we will be discussing today are kind of some tips and tricks when it comes to having conversation, and how it might look a little different now that we have gone through COVID, and talking about some virtual aspects as well as in person. Ways to stay connected to peers, making plans with peers, so that organizational aspect, when, how to share your disability with others, when you feel comfortable to do that, and we'll kind of discuss maybe some things to keep in mind. Setting boundaries when it comes to friendships, so knowing what you can handle, knowing what other people can handle, and respecting those things. We'll talk a little bit about sleepovers, staying away from home, things that you can do with some of your peers and friends. Getting outside your comfort zone, some resources and apps that could be helpful in meeting people in your community. And through all of those aspects that we'll be discussing today, Melissa's going to kind of talk about her personal experience with all of those and kind of give us some insight into her world. So to start off with some tips and tricks of conversation, these may seem very basic. So with like everyday life conversations, but these very basic things are some things that we forget because each of us excel in certain aspects of conversation, and need a little bit more support or guidance in other aspects. For example, some people are really, really good at sharing information about themselves, and others are really good at asking questions and not sharing anything about themselves in conversation. So keeping that in mind, there are 6 tips and tricks that we'll be discussing in a little bit more detail. So starting with tip number 1, starting a conversation, someone has to have enough courage to ask someone a question. So someone has to have enough confidence to walk up to someone, to type to someone online, a question to get to know them. Another tip we'll be talking about is sharing information about yourself, and that is more than a one-word answer. So sometimes when we're having conversations with people, it can be a habit for us just to say, yep, nope, maybe, and kind of leave it at that and not really give people what they're looking for. Tip number 3 is continuing a conversation. So knowing what to say next after someone asks you a question. Tip number 4 is asking follow-up questions. So finding a whole bunch of other questions that you could possibly ask someone to get to know them more and get more detail out of them. A big one now in regards to online platforms like virtual as well as in person is showing that you're interested, because when you're online, you're only in this small little box and people can only see a certain part of you, right? So showing it a little bit in different ways to show that you're interested in what someone's talking about. And tip number 6, social media, tech, and friendships, because that's a whole nother avenue now of what people are dealing with, because we're not always able to see people in person. So really utilizing those apps and social media in a positive way. So purpose of a conversation. The purpose of a conversation is to share information, right? The whole point of why we're going up to someone to begin with is we want to learn something about them. We're interested. Maybe we think they're cool. Maybe we think we like something about them. We want to find out what their likes are, maybe what they like to do, maybe what they think of a topic. And the purpose of it is just to get to know each other, share information about one another. So in talking about tip number 1, and someone having to have enough courage to ask a question and go up to someone has to do it, right? So as hard as it is, some of us are okay with just kind of waiting for someone to come up to us in public settings, right? Like we're the ones that are just kind of silent, maybe looking around, observing people, but not actually going up to anyone and approaching someone, even though we might see someone in the crowd that we're like, hey, that person looks like a cool person. I'd love to talk to them. So someone eventually has to approach someone, because if no one did, we would never have conversations. So just know, as nerve-wracking as it is, the people in the room that you're around are probably having similar feelings, and that's okay, but someone does need to have enough courage to approach someone. So keep that in mind. It's a very common thing where we're thinking we're the only ones that might have that feeling, and just know that it's very normal that others have that feeling as well. So they probably appreciate it if you go up to them, because they're probably waiting just as much as you are. And you're probably wondering like what I can ask. You go up to someone, you're like, what do I even talk about? And there can be so many topics. So for example, school, food, sports, any kind of extracurriculars. I always thinking about what you enjoy talking about. So Melissa, if you were to think of topics that you would be comfortable with someone like approaching you, what would be some topics that you think you'd be okay with if someone kind of just started a conversation with you?
I'd say probably sports or movies and TV, or some of my hobbies maybe. I think those would be good conversation starters for me.
Yeah. So not super invasive, but finding out like what you like to do in your free time, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So so those are things that Melissa probably would approach someone with too, right? Because if you enjoy talking about those things, you probably want to learn about other people's hobbies, what sports they like, TV, movies. And that's definitely a huge one, TV and movies right now, because of Netflix. People are at home a little bit more often. So that's a pretty easy topic, because everyone has some type usually of like a streaming device. So that's tip 1, thinking of conversations or thinking of topics to spark up a conversation with someone. And like I said, it can be very broad. There's so many different topics. Just try to think of what you enjoy talking about and try to ask someone a question. So tip 2 is around sharing information about yourself. So Melissa had said that she enjoys talking about sports, movies, TV, hobbies. So I have some examples up here of giving like a little bit more information about yourself based on some of the topics you enjoy talking about. So instead of just saying, like, if someone was like, what sports do you enjoy watching? And you're just like, hockey. Nothing else. Okay. So giving a little bit more detail. So Melissa, can you give me a little bit more detail than a one-word answer of something that you'd want to share with someone about your hobbies?
So I enjoy skiing and horseback riding. I used to ski race when I was younger, and I used to compete on horseback when I was younger as well.
Whoa, cool. I actually had no idea that you did that. So that's awesome. Okay. So that would spark up a ton of different questions in my mind of what I could ask her, because she's giving me more than just saying skiing and horseback riding, right? Okay, what about TV and movies right now? What's something you could share more than just a short little blurb? Give me something.
Right now, I am binge watching a few different shows. I'm watching You, and I'm watching Big Bang Theory over again. and I really enjoy action and comedy shows as well.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, that could definitely spark up a ton of conversation because you really open the door to so many different avenues within TV and movies. So that's great. So she's sharing more, which it makes it a little bit more personal, right? I might be able to relate to more the more she gives to me because there's more to talk about and more chances for us to figure out commonalities, to figure out if we would actually kind of vibe as friends or colleagues and things like that. Okay, so I put up this little activity because it's something that you can do at home. So just to practice, if there's any parents on this call, it's something you can do with your children or youth to even just at the dinner table, just to get them talking a little bit more. And also for anyone who's on this call, you can practice it with your friends. You can practice it with teachers. You can practice it with anyone, just to kind of get used to thinking about different topics, thinking of questions you can ask, and also something you can share about yourself. Because like I said, some people are really good at sharing information and can share, but they forget to ask questions, and vice versa. Some people are really good at asking questions and they never share anything about themselves. So we want to find like kind of a happy balance when it comes to interacting with people, because that's what's going to form those connections. So for example, on the screen, I have a topic of the weekend. And so thinking of one question you can ask someone just to spark up conversation would be, what are you going to do this weekend? Super easy, right? And then something you can share about yourself instead of just saying like, I don't know, could be, I'm just going to stay home and play some video games, right? It's giving us more than just saying, I don't know. But at least you're being honest and you're sharing maybe a little thing that brings you enjoyment, video games, right? And that could technically, it could spark up some kind of commonality with someone you're talking about, because maybe they love video games as well. So Melissa, in talking about food, if you were in a room and just say food popped into your head magically, what would be a question that you could ask a peer to get to know them about food?
I would probably ask, if you could eat any type of food in the whole world, which type of food would you eat?
Nice. Okay. So seeing like what they're into a little bit, seeing if it might jive with yours, for sure. And so then in thinking about that, what's something that you would share with someone about food and you, and maybe what your interests are?
I enjoy cooking. One of my first jobs was as a sous chef at a restaurant by my house. So I really enjoy cooking Indian food and Chinese food. And it's really one of my favorite hobbies to do.
Okay. Wow. Okay. That would definitely, I feel like, spark up something. Because even if you were asking them what their favorite food was, I'm sure after you shared something like that, they would be like, can you cook this food?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like I said, that's kind of something that you can practice at home, especially with COVID in the last year that we've had. We haven't had a lot of interaction. Like some people aren't back doing programs or in school or whatever it is. They're all virtual still. So I know once we get back to fully in person, these are kind of helpful tricks to keep in mind, that everyone kind of gets nervous about asking questions, but if you practice, you get a little bit more comfortable. And don't be afraid to share a little bit about yourself, because people want to know. That's why they're asking you questions. Okay, so tip number 3, continuing a conversation. So this can be tricky because sometimes we forget what people ask us. Sometimes we get really nervous and we could ramble on, or people can ramble on, right? So we want to make sure we're always sharing the conversation, because like I said, some people are really good at sharing stuff about themselves and they could talk forever, right? And some people aren't very good at answering questions. It could be really short, or even yourself, if you answer really quickly. I'm sure we've all experienced the awkward silences. Yeah, Melissa's nodding with me like, yeah. I'm hoping people on the other screens or at home are nodding along, because I'm sure we've all had them, those awkward silences. So an easy little tip, which it sounds silly, but it is something that if you can make it come second nature to you, it can help you in so many different social settings, which is saying, how about you? Or what about you? So when someone asks you a question, they come up to you, they ask you something, you answer it. So say it was about sports, like what sports do you like? And you're like, oh, I love ringette, or I love soccer, or I love basketball, all these things. And then you don't say anything back to the person. Then there's that silence. And they're like head nodding, like, cool, yeah, I love that. It's a great sport. But you got to remember to ask them the same question so that they're getting involved in the conversation. So after you answer, you could just say, what about you? Or how about you? Or you could just ask the same question back at them, like, what sports do you enjoy? And it's something that can get them involved and that they don't feel that they just need to jump in and start talking without being asked a question, right? So it's showing that you're happy to answer it, but also you want to know what they think. You want to know what they would answer to this question to get to know them. So that's something that I think is the biggest takeaway from any conversation. Tip would be to make sure you're asking, how about you? Because even when you're walking into your house or apartment or condo or wherever you live, into a classroom, into a program, someone asks you a question and you answer it, just try your hardest to say, how about you, to get them involved and get them answering it too. Okay, we're almost finished with these tips. We're on tip number 4. So this is about follow-up questions. So we had the one about continuing, saying the how about you or what about you. But to keep a conversation going longer than, say, 2 minutes, 30 seconds, we got to think of questions, right? And this can be challenging. So a helpful thing we can do is think about the who, what, where, when, why, or how. Those are kind of like the questions you can think about in your brain. So when we're thinking of different topics, we can think of a whole bunch of different questions. So Melissa, maybe we can work together and try to think of at least 5 questions we could ask someone with the topic of free time or hobbies. Okay. So let's just say it out loud.
I would probably start with, what kind of hobbies do you enjoy? And where do you enjoy doing these hobbies?
Okay. What hobbies do you enjoy? That was one. And where do you enjoy doing them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Even if there's like, who do you enjoy doing your hobbies with? Because some people don't like doing team activities or hobbies. Some people like doing it independently. So maybe like, who do you like? Or maybe you have a peer that's like your go-to person to join programs with you, or a sibling or someone that goes with you. So it could be a who. So we got 3 questions.
I would say probably, when do you enjoy doing these hobbies or spending your free time? What part of the day maybe, or what day of the week?
Totally. Yeah, because some people have schedules, right, where it's like every Tuesday or every Sunday, it's like they're playing whatever they're doing, or they have guitar lessons every Tuesday and that kind of stuff. Totally. So that was 5 questions that you came up with. I did nothing there. So thank you for that. Yeah, but I feel like you could really learn a lot about someone asking more details, or asking questions to get more details out of them, right? Because you might find out that, hey, they're really into music, and then you end up finding out that they play piano and the violin, and they've actually done concerts and have traveled the world performing and all that stuff, right? So finding out more about them. All right, tip number 5. So this one is tricky because, like I said, some of us don't always show our emotions or what we're feeling or thinking on our faces, right? And some of us do show them very, very well. So it's showing people interest through a camera, where we're just in these little boxes like we are in right now, or it's in person, right? So in thinking of that, like, what does it look like when someone is genuinely interested in what we're talking about? What do you guys notice? So I don't know if anyone wants to write in the chat, feel free. Melissa and I guess we could just say them out loud, what we notice. For me, a big thing is eye contact. I know some people do not enjoy eye contact, but I personally, if someone's looking in my general area and I know that they're paying attention to me, is there anything for you, Melissa, that stands out?
I think also eye contact and not being distracted by other things. So not being on your phone or not like playing with your pen or something when you're talking to me. And also like body language. If you're like sitting across from me and you're like hunchy over and you're just not looking interested in what I'm talking about, maybe that would make it a little bit harder to continue that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And then I see in this chat smiling, like if someone's smiling at you, you can tell that they are probably interested. I also see in the chat, what do you notice when someone wants to talk? That's a great question. I think a big thing is eye contact, because usually if you're in a group setting, you'll usually make eye contact with someone, or it's a smile, or they might kind of come closer. Like if they're on the other side of the room, you'll notice that they'll kind of come closer. Eye contact is a huge one because you can notice, everyone can kind of sense when someone's staring at them, or even if like you're in a group setting and someone's, I don't know, I'm thinking of like a group program or like recreation or something like that, and someone's explaining something and people like laugh at something and everyone's giggling, you can kind of make eye contact and see who you're kind of like, who else is laughing or who else is thinking that's funny. So that's a great question. I think how we always want to reflect on what we give people as well. So how do you show someone that you would want them to approach you, right? It's usually a smile. It's usually maybe a head nod or something like that, like trying to give those nonverbals to show that you're interested in, or you're open to someone approaching you, right? Because if you're sitting in a corner and with your head down, or you're listening to music, or you're on your phone, you're not really showing people you're interested. But if you're not doing those things and you're present in the moment and you're looking around, or you're listening to what people are saying, or if you're having a conversation with someone and someone comes in and tries to join or stands closer, you can bring them in. So that's kind of ways if people are showing you that they're interested. But also, like I said, reflect on how you're showing people that you're open for conversation. Yeah. I think a big one in showing interest too is the nonverbals, right? So it is the head nods, it is the eye contact, it is like your posture, if you're facing them or if you're turning your back to them, right?
Or if you have your arms crossed and you don't look like you're interested in the conversation as well.
Yeah, a frown or like a scowl. You might be like, oh, I'm not sure if they want me to approach them. So things like that. We kind of touched on it here, like how can you show if someone is not interested in what you're saying, right? So you're having a full conversation, but then you can see they're giving you stuff to kind of let you know, hey, I'm kind of over this conversation. And some of those things can be not, sorry, I'm just looking at the chat. Cross, if they're not, yeah. So arm cross would be an indication that they are not interested in the conversation. Absolutely. Other things like the pictures displaying here, as Melissa stated, like if they're occupied with something else, or you can tell they're distracted, right? So they're either on their phone or they're looking away from you. They're looking at the sky. They're looking everywhere else but at you. You can probably tell that they're distracted and may not be listening. So those are some indicators as well. So in showing you're interested, yes, it's a lot of nonverbals, right? So what you're showing them with your body, but there's also a lot of things you can say in a conversation to show someone you actually care what they're saying. So examples could be like, I like going on walks with my friends, and things, if someone says something like that, Melissa, you could say,
me too.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like, I went away this weekend. You could say, that's so cool.
I'm going away next weekend.
Yeah. So it's kind of like showing you're listening and giving those little remarks. It doesn't have to be a full-blown sentence. It doesn't have to be silence, right? It could just be something as easy as nice, cool, awesome. I didn't know that. I agree. I disagree. You know what I mean? It can be anything, but just even saying that little thing can make someone feel like they're heard, which is a huge thing. So think of like if you were sharing something about yourself and you heard radio silence, complete silence, awkward silence, right? It's awkward.
Yeah.
It's not, you're like, did they care what I just said? Did you care? So it's something you can practice at home, even with like family members, friends, coaches, any like colleagues, anything that you do. When someone shares something, give them a little something. They're looking for it. When you share something, I'm sure we're all hoping that someone says something and doesn't just maybe nod their head and walk away, right? So it's just little things that you can do. And then in saying that, obviously with Zoom, sometimes it's hard to kind of jump in, right? I don't know if people have done these online classes or are doing any programs online. It's really difficult to sometimes unmute without interrupting someone. It's awkward. So giving like some gestures or some expressions that show that you're interested in what someone's saying. So I know I have emojis here, which aren't always realistic to the human face, but thumbs up. If someone says something cool or surprising, you know, like showing a surprise face. If someone's saying something that's really gross, maybe, I don't know, you could give a grossed out face. Why not? Like, what? Confused? Who knows? If someone says something and it's like making you question, maybe something you thought previously, I can't do it, but maybe a one eyebrow up. That could really show someone. Maybe they can read your face and know, oh, they might have a question, right? So they're just like simple things you can do to show people you're interested, which makes it a little bit more helpful to make those connections. Okay. And our final tip, social media and tech and friendships. So I think over the years, especially working with a lot of clients, every year it seems to evolve. There seems to be a new social media account. There seems to be new things to work on. So teaching or like working with clients on how to text, how to email, how to leave voicemails, how to talk on the phone, how to FaceTime, how to use certain apps. Like there's so many things. So in saying that, what, like, do people here like social media? Do people here even have social media? If so, like, what's your favorite social media? Melissa, what would you say is your favorite social media, or if you have any?
I have a few. I use Instagram and Facebook a lot. I use Facebook Messenger a lot to talk to my sister and my niece and nephew. So those are pretty much the ones that I go to along with texting as well.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool. Yeah, those are pretty popular. Texting and Messenger. Yeah, for sure. It's funny because when I do some stuff with clients, a big one right now is TikTok since COVID. Like that seems to be a real big one that people seem to love. So yeah, it's just interesting seeing like the evolution of social media and how every year it's different and what people use. Like Discord is another huge one that I find a lot of people are into.
There's Snapchat in the chat and WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So those are big ones too. Yeah. Snapchat had a huge, I feel like, was it maybe like 2 years ago? I felt like Snapchat was massive and now it's kind of dwindled down a little bit, but people are still using it to stay connected. Okay. So when it comes to like exchanging contact information, what are people comfortable with? Like, are you cool if someone approached you and said, hey, what's your number? Can I get your number? Is that something you're like, yeah, absolutely? Or are you like, I prefer an email. Maybe I'll give you my social media handle. Maybe I'll give you my Discord username. Like, what about you, Melissa? Where are you feeling most comfortable right now?
I don't usually give out my number to people I don't know. I would usually either give them like my Instagram or my Snapchat, just so it's not so connected to me personally. And I feel like it's just safer that way sometimes. And I feel like that's just the easier way to start those kind of friendships and relationships that way.
Totally. It's kind of like the foundation, right? You're kind of testing out. They're new to you. You're like, you can see my social media. You can see what I want you to see.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can decide, because you can always remove them. You can always unfollow them. It's not like they get notified. And then if, say, it does grow and you guys do become closer friends because you're connected through like adding each other on certain accounts and things like that, then you could always exchange numbers, and then it kind of grows that way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then how do you typically stay connected with people? Like, are you a phone person? Are you a FaceTime kind of girl? Are you like texting? Like, how do you find that you connect the best with people?
With like my family, like my sister and my mom, I usually text or FaceTime. I'm not the best person to like pick up a phone and have a chat. It makes me nervous.
Yeah.
So I'll either text or do FaceTime, just so I can, it helps me with conversations to see facial expressions. So that's just how I do it.
Yeah. I know I get nervous with a phone call, so I would hope no one would phone call me, right? It's good that you know that you'll connect better with a FaceTime maybe, or a text for day-to-day stuff, right? And you're willing to put in that effort. So that says a lot. You just have to find out what works best for you. And then you know that you're going to give your best in that friendship or relationship and things like that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. And who normally makes the plans to stay connected with, like, say, your friends, for example? Are you the one that's reaching out more because you're good at that? Or are you the one that normally sits back and waits?
No, I'm usually I like organization. So I'm usually the planner and the one that kind of puts everybody in the right place at the right time. So it's usually me kind of trying to figure out everybody's schedule. So
yeah. Okay. And there's always one of those in a group, right? Yeah. And everyone kind of has their role. And sometimes you need to switch up the role because it gets tiring, I'm sure, always being the planner. But that's good that you know that you're the one that kind of brings people together.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Oh, I'm seeing some things happening in the chat. All right. Most of the time I text, but sometimes I FaceTime my close friends. Yeah. So definitely, texting seems to be a big one. And then with people that you're really comfortable with, that they get the privilege of seeing you in real time. Okay. So staying connected with others. This is definitely challenging at sometimes. And it, like I said, even with conversations, someone always has to be the one to do it, essentially, right? And it can be outside of your comfort zone. It can be nerve-wracking to reach out and be like, hey, do you want to hang out this weekend? Or hey, do you want to go to a movie? Or do you want to play online games together? But if you want to do those things, you got to get outside your comfort zone. You gotta get out there and just do it. And I think the person on the one receiving it is usually super relieved that you're doing it, because they probably want it as well. So you might be thinking, like, how often should I connect? So say you give someone a text and they don't answer. When should you text them again? Should you phone call them? Should you send them a bunch of stuff? Like, what should you do? So I usually have like a rule of thumb of 3. So the first time I think you can reach out and say they don't answer, I always say, okay, maybe they're busy. Okay, maybe they had something going on. Maybe they didn't see it, because sometimes you can look at your phone and you press read, but then you didn't actually read it because you were busy doing something. So I sometimes could send like another one like the next day, maybe. If I still don't hear anything, I give it like a week, and then I reach out again. And then if I don't hear anything, I'm going to guess that they're not interested. So I kind of say I have like a 3-time rule, I guess you could call it. Melissa, would you say that's a fair rule, or would you disagree, or what are your thoughts?
No, I use that rule as well, 3 times, and giving some space in between reaching out. I feel like after the third time, I feel like I've done my job in trying to get us connected in our friendship, or in our knowing each other. I feel like after that third attempt, it's really in their court and they can decide if they want to reach out or not. But you're doing your job as a friend in that partnership to actually try to get connected with them and to hang out.
Yeah. And like you said, that space between maybe the second and third one where you give like a week.
Yeah.
Because maybe, something has happened or maybe something's going on where they're unable to talk. Yeah. So I always say give that 3 rule. And if someone reaches out to you and you do not want to continue the friendship, how would you navigate this? So I get this question a lot where maybe someone is texting you more than you want. And you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, or they call you often, or they want to hang out all the time. How do you navigate this? I always say honesty is probably the best option, but you want to sprinkle it with a little bit of niceness, right? You don't want to be brutally honest and just say like, I don't like you. I don't want to ever see you again. You're really annoying. You don't want to go that route, right? You always want to think, how would you want someone to treat you if you were in their position, right? So you could say like, maybe I just think we have different views on certain things, and maybe it makes me uncomfortable in certain situations. And I think maybe it'd be best if we kind of like chilled out on hanging out and took a little bit of space. So just being kind of honest, and that maybe you need space if there was something that happened, or if you're just really not vibing, and that's fair to say that maybe your personalities just don't mesh, or you feel that maybe it's not like a positive influence on you or something like that. But putting kind of like a nice spin on it, because you don't want anyone's feelings to be super hurt. I think it's feelings of hurt are inevitable, but kind of softening the blow a little bit by just saying like, for myself, this is what I need, and I need that space. Yeah. Anything you think you would add, Melissa, or?
No, I think that's how I would probably go in those situations, is being honest and true to myself and what I need, but making sure that it's not hurting the other person on purpose, just trying to make each other's lives a little bit easier, or that connection a little bit better sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. So I put on here just a couple of apps that I find are helpful in staying connected with people. So a newer app is called Bunch, and it's an app where you can play online games with people. So you can either do it with people on your contact list in your phone, and you can invite them to play games. It's really easy to sign up. You can sign up as a guest and you get a username. And some of the games you can play are like Pictionary, trivia, like a Guess Who game, pool, Minecraft, Roblox, Among Us. There's like a whole bunch of different things. And it's like a video chat, so it's pretty interactive. So I find that's a good one, especially maybe you're bored at night and you just want to play a quick game with someone. It can be just with one person, it could be with a couple. But yeah, you can connect with people either on your social media or your contact list, and that kind of stuff. Discord is a huge one where people are pretty good at staying connected, because it's kind of like an instant messenger platform. So calls, text, it's kind of like a community in and of itself. Among Us is a game where it's like a little bit like sci-fi horror kind of thing. It's like murder mystery, essentially. You could play, I believe, with 10 people. I've played it a couple of times. It's a fun game. You can either play with people you know or people you don't, but there's no cameras or anything. You're just playing with these little creatures. What's Up, like you guys have mentioned before, and Meetups. Meetups is an app that in Toronto especially, people use it either for online like virtual communities, or you can do actual meetups in real life. So say you have a passion for Dungeons and Dragons, or you have a passion for a certain sport, or you love Scrabble, or anything like that. They have meetups like throughout they would have them anywhere in the world, really. Meetups is pretty like nationally run. And you would meet, say, like in a coffee shop, or you would meet at Snakes and Lattes, which is like a place that sells coffee and board games. Or you'd meet, say, in a park. Like if you were playing baseball, they would say like meetups here at a certain park at this time, where the colors black and white for the two teams. So that kind of stuff. So those are some options when it comes to like meeting people in your community that you can use. Melissa, I kind of wanted to talk to you about your experience. So you are originally from a small town and you did a big move to Toronto. And I want to know kind of like living away from home in a new city. It could be isolating at times because you're not surrounded by friends and family. I want to know like how you navigated your social life coming to a new place, and not only a new place, a massive place compared to what you grew up in.
Yeah, so I grew up in Blue Mountain, just 15 minutes out of Collingwood. And after college, I went to college in London. After college, I moved to Toronto to live with a friend. And I was her nephew's nanny for 3 years before I started working at Holland Bloorview. It was the first 3 years I was here, I wasn't really connected to many people. I was kind of isolated in the fact that I was a at-home nanny, so I wasn't really going out much. I wasn't seeing my parents a lot because they live pretty far away. I had my roommate as one of my core friends, and I just got really to know her friends that she has here in the city to start off with. I had a few friends in the city already from my connections with Holland Bloorview and Smile with the Clinic as well. But really coming into a new city was a big step for me in just the independence of it and the social aspect as well. So I really found that my social life kind of got a little bit bigger and a little bit more exciting when I started working at Holland Bloorview, because I got connected with all these awesome people and I got to know more activities and things that happen in the disability community, got reconnected with Shauna and the Hydrocephalus Canada group, and got really involved in that community, and that really helped me to kind of work on my my shyness and my willingness to like break out of my comfort zone and get to know people. So I really found that when I started working at Holland Bloorview, that really helped me to be able to like get used to the fact that I'm by myself now, so I don't have my sister or my brother there to help me join into things. I have to be able to work on those skills myself. So I really found that being able to be on my own and navigate those different aspects of becoming independent and a social person really, really was helpful to meet all the people at Holland Bloorview and just in general around the city. So I joined some online communities. I was involved in some community programming. I did attend like the Abilities Expo and everything that I could that was in person around the city to be able to meet new people, and found things that I enjoyed doing, like going to movies, doing group activities, finding different hobbies around the city to be able to do, So it took me a minute to feel comfortable doing it by myself. But once you get used to it and you realize that it's fun and it's making your life better, it really becomes just second nature.
Yeah. So it sounds like your roommate was kind of someone that you bonded with, which was nice. So you had that, like you weren't living alone, so that was probably helpful.
Definitely.
It looks like you got involved in your community. So you got involved at Holland Bloorview, you said, and you met other people there that you ended up connecting with and then hanging out with outside of Holland Bloorview?
Yeah.
Okay. And then it sounds like you also use your hobbies as a way to meet people who have similar interests to you, and then hopefully you were able to make those connections.
Definitely.
Right.
And another big connection was that my aunt and my cousin lived in Mississauga, so that was another family connection that really got me out of my isolating time in my apartment. They would always invite me over for dinner or game night or go to a hockey game. So they were really integral in helping me to start my new life in the city as well.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. I commend you for doing that, because I feel like that would be super hard going to a new place and having to put yourself out there so much. Was probably quite difficult, but now look at you.
Right?
All right. Well, thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Okay, so like Melissa said, she really got out there. She went to different organizations. So there's like the Hydrocephalus Canada, there's March of Dimes Canada, there's Holland Bloorview, there's different hospitals in every region, essentially, where you can get connected no matter where you are in Canada. Maybe you can volunteer somewhere, right? And find a passion in that, and you can meet people who also share similar interests in wanting to help others, or depending on what you're volunteering, maybe it is like an arts or creative thing, maybe it's a sports thing, but it's a good way to meet people, right? I have a little cartoon up here of a barista. Maybe it's a part-time job. Maybe that's a way that you're going to meet people through colleagues, right? So finding something in your community that can help you get out there a little bit more. What else do I have here picture-wise? I have a gym. Maybe it's getting a membership somewhere, and that's a good way to meet people. Or like Melissa did and joined groups in Toronto, for example. So she found some hobbies and signed up to group event or group programs. Maybe it's a book club. Maybe it's an art thing. Maybe it could be anything really, right? It's just finding what you enjoy, and you have to put yourself out there. And I'm going to be honest, the first time you go by yourself, or even if you have someone to go with, it's going to be awkward. It's going to feel so uncomfortable, but I promise you after the first one, it gets so much easier. And Melissa, I don't know if you see in the chat, super inspiring, Melissa. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so Melissa and I kind of wanted to talk about sharing your disability with others, right? So you meet these people, you forming connections, you consider them your friends. You're probably wondering, like, should I tell them? Maybe how much do I tell them? When do I tell them? What do I share exactly? So Melissa, I was hoping you could kind of shed some light on when you felt it was a good time to share with some people what your disability was and how much to share and all of that.
Definitely. So I just wanted to start by saying this is totally up to what you're feeling and what makes you comfortable. You don't have to tell anybody at all. You could tell somebody just a few things. You could tell them everything. It's just what you're comfortable with. So my core group of friends, it took me a little bit to feel comfortable explaining every single detail of my disability and my needs. They knew that I had a disability and I had trouble walking. And after a few years of really getting to know each other, we kind of started hanging out more. And I had to really think about different scenarios maybe that we would be in. So maybe if we were doing a sleepover or we were traveling somewhere, I really had to think about what I needed to tell them, what my needs were, or how they could help me. So I really thought about it, and I disclose what I need to disclose without oversharing totally. So one example would be if I'm going out with friends and we're doing like dinner and a movie, or we're doing like going to the zoo. I would need to tell them that I need to take breaks, or might need them to push me in a wheelchair, or I might need them to help me get to a bathroom, or if we're out somewhere and maybe I have like an accident or something, then we might have to have a discussion about my toileting needs. So when I do my catheters, or if I need help changing, things like that maybe you think might come up in certain scenarios, maybe would be a good thing to kind of chat about. And I want to say again, whatever you're comfortable with is what you can tell them. They don't need to know everything if you're not totally comfortable with it. But if it is helpful to talk about these things with them, then you totally can. And I tell my clients that if you want to have these conversations with your friends, maybe thinking about it beforehand, writing things down, making notes about the things that you want to tell them. So you have them written down, you know what you need to say. That makes it a little bit easier, because then you don't kind of go off on like different tangents of different things. You're more on point, and it just makes it easier sometimes.
So, Melissa, I have a question.
Yeah.
So did your friends ever ask you, or were they kind of silent and waited for you to be ready to share your disability? Like, how did it work? Like, were they asking a lot of things? Were they not? Like, how did the conversation even get started?
Yeah. So my disability is obviously a physical one. So it's not one that I can totally disguise. So I would get the questions of, why do you walk like that? Why do you use a walker? Why do you have to have somebody help you around the school? Or why do you use a different washroom than everybody else? So those were questions that I was always asked. And I just felt like one day I was like, I'm tired of kind of deflecting these questions. So I really had to think about my answers and what I was going to tell them. And I just found, after I told them what was going on and all the different things that they could help me with, or why I'm different, I felt like the questions stopped. And that was really helpful for me, because I didn't have to explain myself over and over again, or answer the questions so many times. So that's one of the positive things about being able to disclose and share your disability is once they know, then the questions might stop, and it just kind of makes that relationship a little bit better too, because now that you're sharing this, I feel like that means there's trust in that relationship, and they're close enough to you to be able to have you feel comfortable to talk about your disability as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So that's good. So it seemed like you were asked a couple questions, and then for your close friends, you may have shared a little bit more if you felt it was necessary, depending on what you guys were doing.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Well, that's fair. So that does bring us to 8 o'clock. So I guess what Melissa and I hope you guys kind of take away from this is that social and friendship skills take effort, and it's definitely a two-way street. So never stop learning and growing from each experience you have, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's mediocre. We hope that this webinar made you reflect on some of your social and friendship experiences and helps you kind of move forward in your journey. So thank you for your time.
Thank you both, Melissa and Stephanie. We have one message that says, thank you so much, ladies. My daughter and I truly enjoyed this webinar. So yay.
Yay, thank you.